At 77, he had everything people spend their whole lives chasing. A beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. A portfolio that grew while he slept. A career that left a mark on an entire industry. His name was on the door of a company he had built from nothing. And yet, on the night I want to tell you about, he sat alone in a chair by the window, not celebrating, not reflecting with pride, just sitting in the kind of silence that has weight to it. The kind that settles into your chest and stays. His name was Arthur. And he was, by every measurable standard, a success. But the word that kept visiting him that evening, uninvited, like an old acquaintance you hoped you'd outrun, was the word waste. He hadn't wasted his money. He hadn't wasted his time. He had wasted something harder to name, and far harder to get back. Arthur was 26 when he discovered productivity. Not the casual kind, not a new planner or a morning alarm. He discovered it the way some people discover religion. Completely. Devotionally. He read every book, built every system, tracked every hour. He had a spreadsheet for his weekly goals, another for his 5-year plan, another that mapped his finances decade by decade. He time-blocked everything. His workouts, his meals, his reading, even his sleep. He called it living with intention. He believed deeply and sincerely that if he could just optimize enough variables, life would eventually reward him with a kind of perfect clarity. A destination he could finally stop and enjoy. He was brilliant and he was relentless. And for a long time, the results agreed with him. By 32, he had launched his first company. By 38, he had sold it. By 43, he had started another and doubled what he'd made. His peers admired him. Younger colleagues asked to shadow him, to learn his systems. He gave talks at conferences about discipline and focus. He used phrases like guarding your time and saying no to the good so you can say yes to the great. He believed every word. He still does, in a way. That's not the part he got wrong. The part he got wrong was quieter, more gradual. It didn't announce itself. He thought he was building a life, but what he was actually doing, slowly, efficiently, systematically, was postponing it. His daughter's name was Clara. She was 8 when she went through a phase of drawing horses. She drew them everywhere, on napkins, on the margins of her homework, in steam on the bathroom mirror after her bath. Arthur knew this about her. He thought it was charming. But he was never home enough to see it happen in real time. He was always finishing something, always wrapping up a call, always in the last 15 minutes of something important. Clara is 43 now. She lives in another city. She calls on holidays. They are polite with each other in the way that people are when they love someone they don't quite know. He thinks about that sometimes. He thinks about it more than he thinks about any deal he ever closed. His wife, Margaret, was patient for longer than most people would have been. She had her own work, her own friends, her own life built carefully inside the margins he left. For years, she would leave a small lamp on in the living room so he wouldn't come home to a dark house. It was a small thing. He noticed it every time. He told himself he'd thank her for it properly, later, when things slowed down. Things did not slow down. Margaret stopped leaving the lamp on around year 19 of their marriage. He told himself she was just tired. He knew, even then, what it really meant. He chose not to examine it too closely. He had things to finish. Have you ever delayed happiness, not because life was hard, but because you told yourself you'd enjoy it later, when everything was in order? When does later arrive? The year he turned 65, Arthur retired. He had planned the retirement meticulously, of course he had. Financial models, a transition timeline, a list of activities he'd finally pursue. Travel, reading, maybe a garden. He told friends he was entering the optimization phase of leisure. He laughed when he said it. No one corrected him. What he found in retirement was something his spreadsheets had never modeled: silence. Not peaceful silence. Not the silence of a good night's rest, but the silence of rooms that used to have people in them and now didn't. The silence of a phone that rang less often than he expected. The silence of a Sunday afternoon with nowhere to be and, for the first time in 40 years, no urgency to manufacture one. He sat in that silence for a long time before he started to understand what it was trying to tell him. One evening in his 68th year, Arthur found a box of old home videos. A relative had converted the tapes to a digital drive and left it with him after a family gathering. He almost put it aside. He had something else scheduled for the evening, he was sure. But something made him plug it in. He watched for 4 hours. He watched his children as toddlers, laughing at something just off camera. He watched Margaret dancing alone in the kitchen to a song he couldn't hear clearly anymore. He watched himself appear briefly in one clip, younger, thinner, holding Clara on his shoulders while she pointed at something in the sky, and he was smiling in a way he couldn't quite place. An unguarded smile. A smile that had no objective behind it. He watched that clip 7 times. Then he closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a while. What struck him, what quietly dismantled something inside him, was not the memories themselves. It was the timestamp at the bottom of each clip. Because he remembered those years. He remembered them as years of grinding, of pushing, of building towards something. He had filed them away as investment years. But the camera had seen something else entirely. The camera had seen ordinary Tuesday afternoons and impromptu birthday cakes and children who were only that age once. The camera had seen a life happening. He had been there. He had simply not been present. He had been in every room, and absent from every moment. Arthur is 77 now. He still wakes up early. Old habits don't dissolve, they just soften. But he doesn't block his hours anymore. He has tea in the morning without reading anything. He calls Clara more than she expects him to. Sometimes she sounds surprised to hear from him. He finds that he doesn't mind starting conversations he doesn't know how to end. He used to only say things he had prepared. Now he just talks. About small things. About nothing, really. He has come to understand that this is not wasted time. The nothing, is in fact the whole point. He keeps a small notebook now, not for goals or systems, but for moments. Sentence, sometimes. A smell. The exact quality of the afternoon light on a particular Wednesday. He's not sure why he writes these down. Maybe because he spent so long sprinting past them, and there's a comfort and a grief in finally stopping to notice. He doesn't regret his discipline. He doesn't regret his ambition. What he regrets is the theology he built around them. The belief that life was a problem to be solved and that he was close, always just a few more optimized quarters, to solving it. He regrets treating joy like a destination and relationships like a resource. He regrets the voice in his head that said, later, every time something tender and immediate reached out to him. Later is the most dangerous word in the English language. It sounds like wisdom. It is actually just fear, dressed up in a calendar. If you had asked Arthur at 35 what he was doing with his life, he would have told you he was building something. And he was right. He was building a resume, a net worth, a reputation. He was building all the things you can point to and measure. What he was not building What no optimization framework teaches you to build is a life that feels inhabited, a life where the people who love you feel it, a life where you remember the Tuesday afternoons as well as the quarterly results. Life is not a productivity system. You cannot time block your way to meaning. You cannot outsource presence. There is no efficiency hack for sitting with a person who is grieving, or laughing at something stupid with someone you love, or watching your child sleep, or simply being in a room with no agenda. These things don't scale. They don't compound. They don't appear on any dashboard. And they are. Arthur will tell you this without hesitation now, in that calm voice of someone who has arrived somewhere hard. They are the only things that matter when the dashboard finally goes dark. He optimized his whole life, and in doing so, he lived the wrong one. He told me something recently over the phone. I had called him for something mundane. I can't even remember what. At the end, before hanging up, he was quiet for a moment and then he said, "You know what I never scheduled? Being happy today. I always put it off. I always thought it was somewhere ahead of me." He paused. It was always right there. I didn't know what to say, so I just listened, which he would tell you is the most productive thing I could have done. One day, maybe not today, maybe not for years, you will look back at this period of your life. Not at your performance reviews or your savings rate or the number of goals you crushed. You will look back and ask, was I here? Did I feel it? Did the people I love know I was glad to be with them? Did I let ordinary Tuesday afternoons mean something? Arthur is 77. He is still here, still learning. He would tell you that the most important thing he ever did, the thing that took the most courage, after a lifetime of treating courage as a synonym for discipline, was to put down the planner and simply show up. Not efficiently, not optimally, just fully, completely, present. Life was never meant to be optimized. It was meant to be lived. And the beautiful, terrifying thing is, you still have time.